got this recorded for everybody else. So what we're going to be talking about today, you guys, is closing. In a lot of the feedback that we've been getting from the staff, and we really watch these numbers closely, but it has to do with closing the sale. So the first thing that I want to talk about, though, before we get into the actual presentation process, is the first close that we have to have, and that's the close of selling the value of the visit on the phone. And years ago, I heard this statement, and I can't even remember who said it to me, but I just want this to just kind of marinate for a second. But think about this. More sales are lost on the phone than in the home. And where I'm going with this is that when we have a person on the other end of the line and we're trying to create the value of the appointment, in a lot of cases we have one shot. And then we might have this, I'll call you back, and all of you who are on this phone call can give me examples of situations where you call a family month after month and they're not ready, and they're not ready, and they're not ready, and we just keep kind of spinning our wheels. So just kind of keep that in mind. This also goes, you guys, with walk-in, and not walk-in necessarily, but definitely call in when people call into the funeral home, and how we handle those phone calls and the way that we present that if we are selling over the phone, we're going to have a really hard time getting a face-to-face visit. If we don't get a face-to-face visit, then we're going to really have a hard time closing a sale. So the whole goal in all of this is that we have a face-to-face visit. Now, keep in mind that we are doing some online presentations. That counts as well. But as many of you have reported, those online presentations are usually a 2 or 3 step process. That should still be a last case scenario, is that if they can't come to the funeral home and they don't want you to come to their home, then we can talk about presenting all of this information online to them. So here's a couple of key things when we are on the phone and we're talking to families and we're setting appointments. The main purpose of the visit is to deliver the personal wishes organizer, and that's it. If you focus on the planning guide and you believe in the planning guide and you can explain to the family what it is and why it's important for them to have one, that's really all that needs to be discussed on the phone. So as you're explaining that, it takes 20 to 30 minutes to go over the book and answer any questions. If the appointment does go longer, it's because you've built the value of pre-planning. So if it comes up, it usually takes 20 to 30 minutes for me to go through the book. And then there's a little bit of time I'll leave for answering any questions that you have, because I can promise you it's probably going to bring up some questions after I go through the book. But again, the book is free, and we want every family in our community to have their own copy. So we're focusing on the personal wishes organizer. If you haven't gotten into this routine yet, and I'm sure that a lot of you are still making phone calls that are geared towards, are you ready to do your funeral planning, as opposed to, I need to get you, my records indicate you haven't gotten our personal wishes organizer yet. It's free, and we want every family in the community to have their own copy. That's the focus on your first phone call. Now, if you've been to the home and you presented to them, obviously your phone call is going to be different, but we're talking about getting in the home for the first time. The focus is the personal wishes organizer. It's the free planning guide. It's a place to document all your decisions so your family members will know what to do and who to call. We don't talk about on the phone prices, payments, discounts, price freezing, child and grandchild protection. The list goes on and on and on. We don't talk about that stuff on the phone, because last time I checked, you cannot shove a pin through your phone receiver. You can't discuss these things on the phone. So if the questions come up and they say, maybe this is even a call-in, can you tell me how much this is? How much is cremation? Hopefully you've all gotten some training either on a location basis or from us, but there are a lot of different options available. What really works best is for us to be able to sit down face-to-face so I can answer some of your questions and give you a price that is personalized for you and what you want and need, right? Because prices vary a lot, and you can't just come up with a price. So again, We don't talk about things on the phone. If they come up, how I'd like to respond, and maybe you have some responses that you like, but I would say, those are actually really important questions. And I promise to bring all that information with me and answer any other questions that come up when we get together. Are afternoons or evenings better for you? I'm going to sidestep those questions, and because I really want a face-to-face visit. So just be mindful that if they come up, we can't afford anything. That's the next thing, right? Well, we can't afford anything right now. It doesn't matter, because all you're doing, if in your head, all you're doing is bringing them a free book. So if they say they can't afford anything right now, in our minds we say, so what? That doesn't matter, because all I'm doing is bringing them a free planning guide. When somebody says they can't afford anything right now, what does that even mean, right? Personally, I can't afford to go and buy a $160,000 Lamborghini, right? But I could probably go and afford a Nissan Sentra, right? So when we say we can't afford anything right now, that has no context to it, because what people can and can't afford is based upon what they see as important and not important. So when they say that, we don't know. Does that mean they can't afford $20,000 today, or does that mean that they can't afford a $200 a month monthly payment? So what? That's the whole point. So we say, I understand that this doesn't work for you financially right now, and you know what? That's okay. At the very minimum, you'll have your decisions written down. Are afternoons or evenings better for me to bring the book by? It's the book. It's the book. You deliver books. That's the whole purpose of the visit. That's your first close. If you get off into the weeds about anything else, price freezing, payments, our prices are going up, any of that stuff that comes up during your call, again, let's go back to the first statement. More sales are lost on the phone than in the home. So be very mindful that if questions come up, Susan, those are really important questions, and I promise to bring all that information with me and also answer any other questions that might come up. Are afternoons or evenings better for you? That's how you address the question, okay? Now, if they're calling specifically about a specific price, there might be some things that you can address there. But again, most people are really comfortable when you respond that way. Those are really important questions, and I promise to bring that all that information with me, or I promise to provide all that information when you come into the funeral home, and also address any other questions that will likely come up. Are afternoons or evenings better for you? That's how you address those, so you don't get off into the weeds, because what we'll do is we find ourselves selling on the phone, and all of a sudden we're talking about monthly payments and discounts, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they can't afford anything. None of that stuff matters. Our goal is to get a face-to-face meeting and give them a free copy of the Personal Wishes Organizer. That's it. I'm not going to get into objection handlers. You guys have a lot of that stuff. But when they say, you know what, my kids are going to take care of this, that's fine. Our book's designed for families like yours who their kids are going to take care of it. I have life insurance. You know what, that's great. I think life insurance is important. In fact, our book, The Personal Wishes Organizer, is designed for families that intend for their life insurance to pay for their funeral. I'm a veteran. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. In fact, our Personal Wishes Organizer is designed for veterans. It's all about the book. I think I beat that drum enough. If you can make this transition, you'll get in front of more people. That's the goal, is to get in front of more people, because selling can't happen over the phone. It happens face-to-face, okay? Let's cover the 6 rules of closing really quick as we go through this. We've got a lot of information to go through, and I'm hoping to get through it all. You are all on mute, but feel free, you guys, to chat in your questions as we're going through this. I'll monitor that chat box just a little bit, see if anything comes up, or we'll just address the questions at the end. But again, once we're sitting in front of a husband and a wife, and we're getting ready to make a sale. This goes back to what Michael actually shared last week in one of the pre-need pro tips. But we do not prejudge before any appointment. Every family deserves the right of saying no to having the very best. I'm going to present to them the same way, whether they're in a single wide trailer home, or they're in a beautiful $1 million home. I'm going to present to these people the same way, because we'll often hear, come over, but we aren't going to buy anything. you know what? That's fine, because if it doesn't fit for you financially right now, that's okay. At the very minimum, you'll have your personal wishes organizer, and that doesn't cost anything. Our afternoons or evenings better for you. We don't know what that means. We don't know what people can afford and not afford until we're sitting in front of them. They may have just, on an aftercare lead, for example, this is a really good example. On an aftercare lead, they may have just spent, several $1,000s at the funeral home, and in their mind, they're thinking, oh my gosh, we just spent $6,500 for dad. I don't have any money left, because they think they're going to have to come up with $6,500. Don't get into that on the phone. That's fine. No problem. If it doesn't fit your finances right now, that's okay, because all I want to do is bring you the book, okay? It doesn't matter what you hear. You're going to the home to protect the family emotionally and financially. Every visit is going to be the same way. It's amazing, as Michael shared on his Preneed Pro trip, the number of people that I've got into places where I've walked through the door and prejudged, and all of you have had this experience, and you ask them the closing question, the total value or the total investment for both of your funeral plans today is, $18,500. Is that something that you can just take care of today, all in one payment? And they'll say, yeah, we'll just take care of that today. Some people are very frugal in the way in which they live, and they have plenty of money in the bank. You can't prejudge. So, in fact, there's been many, many people who said, I can't afford anything right now. And we go over there and we present well, and they end up writing a check for the full amount. So get that out of your head. It goes in one ear, it goes in out the other. I'm going to present to this family as if they have all the money in the world, and the checkbook is sitting on the table when I get there. That's the vision that you want at every presentation. But of course, you can earn their trust, educate them on the value of pre-planning, and guide them through the decisions. They will make a buying decision. It's been miraculous to me, still to this day, and of course I'm not actively doing this now, but when I hear of a story of somebody walking into a stranger's home for the very first time and leaving the house with a check that's written for several $1,000s, that is awesome. That is the coolest experience, because think of what you've done in 2 hours. You've built trust. You have integrity. They trust you. They trust your brand. They're literally pulling out their checkbook and writing a check for several $1,000s after a 2-hour visit. Any of you who have experienced that should give yourself a pat on the back, because that merits a great reward for you guys, because we are there to help that family prearrange, okay? We build trust through active listening. Obviously, asking questions is extremely important, but people do. Trust is more important than likability. There's a lot of people that I like, and you guys can think of these people. There's a lot of people that you like, but you probably don't trust that much, right? So what's really more important in a arrangement is that, sometimes you hear, well, people like you and they trust you, then they buy from you. I think it's reverse. If they trust you and they like you, they'll buy from you. Trust is number one. Likability is certainly important, and we have likability by just simply being active listeners. So to be an active listener, if you guys think you might struggle with this, and this is something that actually I personally struggle with, is to kind of learn how to be more of an active listener. The best way to do that is to repeat things back to people and make sure that you understand things correctly when you ask a question, but just be a good active listener. Also, if you find yourself doing 80-90% of the talking, keep in mind, we've been given 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, is because we should be listening twice as much as we're talking. So if you're not asking a lot of questions, this is going to be difficult for you to build trust. I think a lot of you have probably been even in a personal situation where you walk away from it and you say to yourself, I really like that guy. It's usually not the people that you meet for the first time and they talk your ear off, because you'll say, man, that guy just liked to talk about himself. It's usually people who showed interest in you that you walk away from and you say, man, I really like that person. If you think about experiences like that in your own life, you'll discover that the reason that you like that person is because they showed a genuine interest in you, and that's why you liked them. So again, trust is built by asking good questions, being an active listener, but not talking about yourself, and always focusing on the family and their needs and getting to know them. And be careful, of course, to not get stuck in the friend zone, which is you ask them a question about your family, then you get off on a tangent or into the weeds about some big fancy vacation that you went on. And then they talk about this fishing trip that they took and caught all these great fish. And then you got to tell your story about the fishing trip that you took. You're getting in the friend zone, and they don't really care, to be quite honest. Stay focused on them and what's important to them. If they ask you questions, answer them. But if they don't, keep asking them questions, building that relationship and building that trust. Number 3, use high urgency words throughout your presentation. This is one place where people start to get uncomfortable, okay? A good example, we had a counselor a few years back who I thought actually gave a very good presentation, but he was really struggling on closing on the first appointment. And we went through this exercise of using high urgency words. You know, for example, when the two of you make all these decisions today and one of you passed away tomorrow, won't things be much easier? By taking care of all of these decisions today, you're relieving that burden from your family. Wouldn't that be nice? Again, today, tonight, yesterday, if somebody had passed away yesterday, what do you think you'd be going through today? Okay, these are high urgency questions. They paint a vivid picture of, you know, obviously, hopefully we want and don't expect for people to use these services until many years down the road. But you have to present that concept of if something were to happen today, if something happened yesterday, by taking care of these things tonight, what type of experience will your children have if something were to happen to one of you tomorrow? These are high urgency words that paint a picture of a sense of urgency for them to make a decision. Use these words throughout your presentation. Again, yesterday, today, tonight, tomorrow. This is where people start getting uncomfortable. Oh, this is high pressure. Again, your job as a sales professional is to create an environment that has a sense of urgency attached to it. If there's no sense of urgency, people, if they're my age, for example, well, I'm going to live another 30 or 40 years. Why do I need to take care of this? I have plenty of time to take care of this. So if somebody doesn't speak with me with a sense of urgency, then I'm not going to have a sense of urgency either. So sometimes we don't realize that we are creating the environment that at the end of the presentation, they're not ready to make a decision because we've actually implied that they can wait. They have plenty of time. It's, you know, talk it over, go talk to your kids. We actually imply some of these things and we don't even realize that we're doing it because we avoid being uncomfortable. So we avoid high urgency words. Again, are you truly serving a family in a presentation if you're not helping them both plan and fund their funeral, right? And we know that the likelihood of them funding their funeral later goes down significantly after the first visit. You don't need to be high pressure. If you do all of these things, you're not considered high pressure. You are a professional advisor. You know with passion and belief that every family who pre-plans is better off. And because of that, you're going to know and understand that you have to do some of these things to get people properly protected. So keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. Use emotional trial closes. We have another thing that we've sent out before. After the presentation today, I'm going to send out actually, again, our 10 important questions and our emotional trial closes. This is just an example of one. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, by making his decisions today, high urgency word. You can go to bed tonight, high urgency word, and have the peace of mind knowing that if something happens to you tomorrow, high urgency word, your children will know exactly what mom and dad wanted. Wouldn't that be a comforting feeling? Right? And we can do the Sullivan nod, the up and down. Wouldn't that be a comfortable feeling? And then wait for them to respond. Even if they just nod their head up and down because you are, again, high urgency, emotional trial close, wouldn't that be a comfortable feeling? And so look at your presentation and make sure that you're using some of these throughout your presentation, and you'll find that you're building value. I don't have a graphic of this, but if you can imagine just for a minute, and some of you have heard this before, You walk into a home, and in front of you is a little V and a big P. V is for value and P is for price. Your job during your presentation is to build the size of the V. You're growing the size of the V, which is the value. Once the value or the V is bigger than the P for price, you're ready to close a sale. But what oftentimes, sadly, is we build the V just so that it's still a little bit smaller than the P, and we haven't done enough to have them make a buying decision. Okay? Again, this isn't about high pressure. This is about being a professional advisor and being passionate and enthusiastic about what you do. You know, for every sale you lose by being too enthusiastic, you'll lose 10 by not being enthusiastic enough. Be passionate about what you're doing, and the family will believe that, right? All selling is just a transfer of belief. If you believe it, they're going to believe it. So that's probably a first step is, do I really truly believe that it's okay for families to make financial sacrifices to pre-plan their funeral? Do I believe that? Do I believe that it's okay to skip going out to dinner 2 or 3 times a month so that they can afford their funeral plan? Do I believe that? You need to ask yourself that question, and the more you believe it, the more convincing you're going to be. Okay? There's a lot of things that we talk about following word for word. If there's any part in the presentation that is so important, is at the end of the presentation when you're asking for a sale. And my pre-need pro tip that I sent out to you guys last week, I shared a story of I guess I sent out the pre-need pro tip on Monday, but last week I was involved in a presentation with Funeral Innovations, who's a Facebook marketing company. They were presenting to one of our funeral home clients. And at the end of the presentation, after they talked about the value of what it is that they will provide the funeral home for marketing, at the end of that, they showed 3 packages. So this is now we're at an alternate choice. They had, I can't remember, there was the bronze, silver, and gold. Very, very simple. And he just simply explained the gold package, and he said, and then in the silver package, explain the bronze. You get everything in the bronze plus this in the silver. This, and this. You get everything in the bronze and silver plus this in the gold package. Then he simply just asked the funeral home owner, which of these packages, well, he did say, I recommend the gold package for these reasons. But then he said, but which package do you think will best fit what your funeral home needs for a digital marketing plan right now? And the funeral home owner was a little uncomfortable. I could tell. I was uncomfortable, and I was just listening. He said, we'd probably go with the silver package. He didn't say, definitely the silver package. I want the silver package. Let's start it today. Do you want my credit card number? He said, probably the silver package. The salesperson said, that's great. That's an excellent choice. It's a good place to start. He said, with the silver package, it's $395 per month. You can just go month to month and pay $395, and there's a $400 setup fee. Or you could sign a 12-month contract. You pay month to month, $395 per month, and we'll waive the $400 setup fee. Or you can pay 12 months all up front. We'll waive the $400 setup fee, and we'll give you a 15% discount off of those 12 months. And he said, which of those payment options would work best for you? I mean, it was like textbook perfect, right? Well, he hummed and hawed a little bit. He said, these were his words. If I'm going to do it, I'd probably just pay for it all up front. He never even at that point said he was going to do it. He said, if I'm going to do it, I'll probably pay for it all up front. The next question was, would you like us to deduct that automatically from your checking account, or would you like to put that on a company credit card? He said, I'll probably put it on a company credit card. And then he said, do you have that credit card on you so I can get the number? And he said, I don't have it on me. It's upstairs in my office. And the salesperson said, that's okay. I'll just mute my computer for a second, and I'll wait for you to go get your credit card. And again, the salesperson, Alex, was completely comfortable that he knew the value of what he was offering the funeral home was worth every penny. So he had no problem asking for the money. And the funeral home owner was comfortable in giving him a credit card. But if, again, even as just a listener on that call, I could have easily said, you know, he didn't really say he wanted to do it. He said that he probably would want to do this. He'd probably want to do that. And even if Alex maybe would have said, you know what, well, I don't want to put you out right now. Your credit card's like all the way upstairs. Why don't you just call me back when you have it on your person? You know, this sale could have gone another direction, and he could have, you know, gotten busy with funerals, and a week could have gone by, 2 weeks could have gone by. Something could have happened in his family where it pulled him away from work, and all of a sudden Alex is going to be following up until he can get that initial payment to start the program. But he didn't do that. He was a sales professional, and he followed through the steps. So this is exactly the same pattern that we follow. The total investment for everything today is $18,982. This is where families usually ask about their payment options. Now, you could pay in full if that works for you, or you can make payments over time. I'm going to give you both options, and you tell me what works best. The only thing I would probably add to that is today. So we're going to have a high urgency statement. I'm going to give you both options, and you tell me what works best today. Now, Bob and Joan, how old are each of you? Okay? I'm going to take you through it a little bit different way. It's the same principle, though. The total investment for today for everything we discussed is $18,982. Is this an amount that you'd be comfortable paying the full amount today, or would it work better for you to make smaller monthly payments? I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to close my mouth, and I'm going to allow them to take a minute to answer. Sometimes a little discussion now pursues between the husband and wife. You know, we could take care of it, but maybe we would just want to start with monthly payments. And maybe some questions will come up at that point. You'll want to answer those. Alternate choice, do you think you'll pay it in full, or would it work better for you to make smaller monthly payments? I'm not going to hum and haw here. And they might even say, you know, probably it would be better if we made monthly payments. I'd say that's great. If they just say they want to pay in full, I'm just going to get out the paperwork and start to write. I'm not going to hesitate. I'm not going to delay. I'm not going to get nervous about whether or not they're going to actually give me a check today. I'm just going to assume that they are. And I'm going to say, what's your Social Security number, Susan? By the way, some of you avoid getting the Social Security number. It's not required on a homesteader's application. But in my opinion, it's a good trial close that if people are willing to give you their Social Security number, they've probably decided that they're going to buy. So they might say, well, what's that for? I might say, well, that's just an identifying number, just because there could be other people out there with your same name. If you're not comfortable with giving your Social Security number, I'll just take the last four of the number. But I will need your birth date. Susan, what's your birth date? And what's the last four of your Social Security number? We're just going to move through the paperwork now. We're not going to pause. We're not going to say, I wonder if they're really serious. I don't think I've answered all of their questions. We're just going to keep moving forward. If their answer is they want to make monthly payments, I'm going to get out the paperwork and ask another question. Susan, what's your age? If I don't already know that, I'm going to ask them another question. Then I'm going to say it's going to take me just a minute to calculate your monthly payment options. I'm going to put those on my cost estimate sheet. And then this is how I used to do it, and it worked great. Again, it's the same way every single time. It didn't matter who they were, how much money they had, how much money I thought they had. I'd say for $300 a month, your plan will be paid off in 3 years. For $200 a month, your plan will be paid off in 5 years. And for $100 a month, your plan will be paid off in 7 years. Which of those monthly payments best fits your budget? High urgency word today. And then I pause. And that little 3-second pause probably even seemed like a long time because I'm talking super fast right now. And by the way, I'm talking way faster than I would normally talk in a presentation. I'm going to slow it way down. Bob and Susan, for $300 a month, your plan will be paid off in 3 years. For $200 a month, your plan will be paid off in 5 years. Or for $100 a month, your plan will be paid off in 7 years. Which of these monthly payments best fits your budget today? And I'm going to wait for an answer. I will not bail them out. I'm not going to talk. After I answer this question, I'm not going to say a word. When you ask a closing question, don't speak. There's always going to be a short pause, and it's always going to seem like eternity, and that's okay. I love somebody said once, when you ask a closing question, it takes time to marinate. Let the question marinate and do not bail them out. This is so important because if you bail, this is uncomfortable. Trust me, you guys, this is uncomfortable. but it is vital that you let them process things out in their mind, and it doesn't happen that quickly. I just recently went through a car buying experience. My daughter totaled one of our cars. We had to go and get another car. Anytime they asked a question, it took me a minute to kind of plan out in my head what I was wanting to accomplish, which with buying a new car. But, luckily I had a good salesperson that just gave me the time to do that. But again, when you ask a closing question, don't say anything. It's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. All right? The next thing is be ready for objections. This is a vital part of the presentation. This is probably where your first questions are going to come up. And it's really important that you're ready for these objections. We need to think about it. I'm not going to get into all of these. And I'll be honest, I'm going to go backwards just a little bit. If you do everything methodically, as I've shared up to this point, you don't have as many objections as what you think. If you're thorough in your presentation, if you ask lots of good open-ended questions, you do a lot of questioning and listening, and you're an active listener, and you answer most of the objections will come up during the presentation as you're asking little trial closes. At this point in the presentation, if you've done a thorough job, it doesn't all of a sudden just go with the red light and we're not going to move forward at all. The more thorough you are in your presentation, the better, more time you spend in the personal wishes organizer, the more value you build, the less objections you're going to have at the end of the presentation. But if you have some, and specifically if you guys are finding objections that you're getting on a regular basis that are the same, you're probably saying something during your presentation that is creating that objection, especially if you hear the same thing, the same a lot over and over again. There's something that you're doing in your presentation that's bringing that up. Because again, a thorough presentation has fewer objections at the end. But again, if an objection comes up, this is a good sign. It means they're interested and they just need to have answers. It's important to just stop because things do get uncomfortable. When you stop selling, you stop caring. This is a really important principle. Don't stop selling. Keep figuring out what it is that's preventing them from moving forward, especially if you know they have the money, but something is preventing them from moving forward. Those are the ones I hated the very most, when I knew that they had the money, but they didn't buy. Because I had to really self-analyze and look in the mirror. And a lot of times I'd say, is there somebody I know that probably could have closed that sale? And the answer is yes. Then I might say to myself, well, then how come I couldn't, right? How come I couldn't do it? They had the money and they didn't buy. Don't make excuses about them and this and that, and they just don't do anything on the first visit. Get that stuff out of your brain. Look in the mirror, take a hard look in the mirror, and you say to yourself, what could I have done differently to build trust, to build likability, and to get that family protected? What could I have done differently? Don't put it on the family. Don't make excuses for them. Don't say, well, this family never buys anything the first time they talk to somebody. I guarantee they have. You have to take personal responsibility and say, what could I have done differently? Okay? If objections do come up, this is going to be a little bit redundant from some of the things I've already said. But again, it's only requests for more information. Customers without any objections rarely buy. It's the ones who say we aren't buying anything today that are most likely to buy. They make statements like this because they're afraid that if they show any interest, that they'll be pressured. So it's the same thing, right? You guys, you walk into the store and they say, can I help you find anything, right? It's the same exact principle that, and we say, no, I'm just looking. I don't know if you're like me, but I don't really window shop very often, probably because I'm a guy, but I usually go into the store specifically looking for something. And I find it funny for myself because I'll walk into like an office store and like an Office Max or whatever. There's usually somebody with a little headset on right at the front entrance, and they'll say, what can we help you find today? And I'll inevitably, through habit, say, I'm fine. I'm just looking, or I'm just coming in, or I know what I'm looking for. And then I'll take a few more steps and I'll turn around, and I want to save some time. So I turn around and I'll say, can you tell me where the sheet covers are? Because I'm looking for something specific, but through habit, what do I say? I say, no, I'm just looking. Well, most men just don't go in the store to look. They go in the store to buy something and leave. So that's not even a true answer. But through habit, I'm saying those things, right? So just understand that through habit, people are going to put their guard up. They're going to put their wall up. They're going to make statements. to protect themselves. We aren't buying anything today is one of those statements. I've heard that many times at the very beginning of a presentation. Just so you know, before we get into this, today we're just going to be getting some information. We're not going to want to make any major decisions today. We're not going to be spending any money today, but we're just here to make some decisions. That's the exact same thing, by the way, that I told the car dealership. I looked online, Facebook Marketplace. I narrowed it down to a few cars. I walked into the dealership, and the first words that came out of my mouth to the salesperson was, just so you know, we're just starting this process. We're going to be driving a couple of cars here. We've got a couple other cars that we're going to drive. We aren't going to make a decision today. I told the salesperson that. You know why I said that? Because I didn't want him to pressure me. And guess what I ended up doing? I ended up buying a car from that dealership and didn't even go look at the other dealerships. But I did that to protect myself because I didn't want to feel pressured. You've all done it, and then you've all bought anyways. So just keep that in mind and think of your own buying habits and how you handle things. And just remember that people are just like you are. We aren't that much different. We say that to protect ourselves. So I'm guessing that salesperson, he was actually very good at what he did. He was maybe very comfortable, asked a lot of questions. And he probably just said, all right, they aren't going to buy anything today. Deleted it from his brain and just took care of me as if I was going to buy something, regardless of what I said. That's what's important for us as we're handling objections. If you handle objections before they come up, this is where things might come up throughout the presentation. By the way, asking good questions, like, for example, what type of impact do you think this is going to have on your kids if something were to happen to one of you tomorrow and everything is all taken care of? When you ask questions like that, guess what doesn't come up at the end? We need to talk to our kids first, because you've made it very clear in your presentation that the reason they're doing this is so that their kids don't have to worry about it. So that's really important as you're going through these things. Again, if you have a lot of this, we need to talk to our kids, or we're going to shop around, and you hear this a lot, it's because of something you're saying in your presentation that's implying that they need to shop around. And so if you bring up, like, for example, just so you know, we're, as far as our prices are concerned, some funeral homes are more expensive and some are less expensive. And we're probably right in the middle. And you say something like that and they didn't even ask that question, you're implying that they need to go shop around, not even realizing that you're doing it. So just don't give information that's not relevant to them and is not information they don't specifically ask for. So no matter the objection, when you effectively address them through your presentation, they won't come up at the end. So again, address it if it comes up, if it's a question. But sometimes we make these statements because we think that people want to know these things, and they really don't. They may have not even considered another funeral home, but yet you bring up another funeral home's name, and you put an idea in their head, oh, I need to go look at Smith Funeral Home first, because actually I remember my uncle was buried there. Like, sometimes we create objections. So just be mindful of staying really focused on them, focused on your offering, focused on your brand, and don't bring anything up that might imply that they need to take another action before moving forward. This is really important. But handle objections before they come up. Ask emotionally driven questions. I'm not going to go through all of these right now. There's 10 powerful questions I'm going to include with this presentation. You all heard the statement that we all like to buy things, but nobody likes to be sold. A good example, again, when I recently purchased the car, my wife has always had a minivan because we've got a big family, and this is going to be her first SUV. And he figured all this stuff out. He's like, well, what was your last car, and how long did you have it? And, have you ever driven an SUV? And, we went through the, is having four-wheel drive important to you? Do you do a lot of traveling where you go long distances in your car? He asked all of these questions. And at no time we didn't feel like we were being sold. We felt like that he was genuinely getting to know what was important to us. So be really careful. Again, I've explained this before. I'll give you another thing to visualize. But if you tell people, you need to do this so you can take this burden off of your kids, that's worth a point, okay? And you got to get to, let's say, 100 points. That's worth a point. To make a statement to tell people that they need to do something for this reason, that's worth a point. However, if you say, how do you think your children will benefit by you taking care of this ahead of time? And then shutting your mouth and letting them answer, that is worth 10 points. What would be some reasons why you'd want to take care of this ahead of time? Let them tell you their reasons. Instead of telling people that they need to buy, ask them why they want to buy. Why is this important to you? What would be important to you when choosing a funeral home? What kind of experience do you want your children to have when you pass away? These are the types of questions that are going to keep you engaged with asking and listening, asking open-ended, powerful questions sprinkled throughout your presentation. Again, it's going to eliminate objections at the end of the presentation, and it's going to build trust, and they're going to like you because you're showing interest in them. These are all things that are extremely important. So use the 10 powerful questions. Again, we've challenged you guys to do this before. You don't even have to send us the presentation. We all have these really great smart devices, these phones that we can record audio on them. Put your audio recorder on in the background, set it on the table. Doesn't matter if you use your calculator or anything, it's going to continue to record. Even if you're not comfortable with sending it to us, go back to the office, sit down in a quiet place, and listen back to your presentation. And just with a little slash mark, count the number of alternate choice questions and the number of open questions that you asked during the presentation. Those two things, by just understanding that and then also analyze too, am I doing too much talking? Like I am right now because nobody else is able to respond, but am I doing too much talking? A lot of times you are. You're explaining things way too much. Figure out what's important to the family by asking questions and then make recommendations. That is what a good presentation is, building value through powerful questions, not just making a bunch of statements and telling people they need to do this, and telling people they need to freeze the prices, and telling people they need to, stop telling, start asking. It's going to make a huge difference in the way that you present. Okay? We talked about this early on, just using those active listening skills. When you do ask a question and they share an answer, repeat it back to them, right? Not only that, but you're going to remember, but it also shows it shows that you have a great interest in them as a person. So again, if you do have an objection that comes up, you repeat it. If I understand you correctly, your concern is this, and this is an answer to that question. And we just say, I hope I answered that concern okay. Would there be anything else preventing you from getting started? Today is the high urgency word. I hope I answered that question okay. Would there be anything else preventing you from getting started today? You guys, this isn't high pressure either, by the way. You're trying to peel back the layers of the onion, right? You're trying to figure out what it is really holding them back from getting started today. So, there's nothing wrong with this. I hope I answered your questions okay. Would there be anything else preventing you from getting started? Just peel it back, figure it out, okay? We're running up on an hour here, so I'm only got a couple more slides to go through. Then again, you got to find the real objection. Is it trust? If you do the things that we've talked about, you're going to build lots of trust because you've asked them lots of questions. You've learned a lot about them. You've used active listening by repeating things back. Is it fear? Right. So sometimes fear is that they've made a bad decision. They don't want to make another bad decision. There's ways we can overcome fear. For example, I would always recommend this, but if they're really worried that if they sign the paperwork today, they're going to be locked into a 7-year contract. Obviously, that's not the case with life insurance. So if let's just go ahead and get things started today. I'm sure you'll be really comfortable with everything. But if for some reason you talk about it and you decide that you don't want to move forward with the plan, or maybe you want to change something, just give me a call and I'll come back out. And just so you know, too, if you completely change your mind in the next 30 days, we're going to actually refund your money anyway. So let's just get everything done while we're here together today. When you get your policy in the mail in a couple weeks, give me a call. I'd be happy to come over and just go through things with you a second time. And we'll go through the whole thing. Very rarely do people take advantage of that. oh, he told me we had 30 days to cancel, because you build value. I rarely had it come up where people called and said, okay, well, I want to cancel now because of the value of the presentation. But it does give them some comfort in knowing that if they change their mind, or maybe something happens, or maybe I was dishonest and they figure that out, that's when I shouldn't probably bring that up, as if I'm not selling with integrity. That's when I should be worried. But if you're doing everything you know and you've done it with the most integrity and trust, just giving people just that comfort of if they change their mind, or even down the road, if they decide they want to change something, they can do that. That's one of the benefits of pre-planning, right? Is that if they change their mind, we can come back out and we can help you make adjustments to your plan. So don't spend a lot of time talking about you, talking about your company, unless they ask. You can talk about, have some value statements built around the funeral home and how families are very happy when they're served there. But again, what is most important is asking a question like, when choosing a funeral home, what are some things that are important to you? And then you might be able to say at that point, well, I'm glad that's important to you, because that's one of the most important things to us as a funeral home as well. You don't even need to necessarily repeat it, but again, asking questions instead of selling, telling, explaining things. So this is where kind of just understanding the indecision can be more damaging than a bad decision. You've got to either kind of get them to a yes or no place. Obviously, the advantage is get them to yes, but indecision is a bad place to be. So keep chasing with the families. We've all made bad buying decisions and fear this might happen again. And so fear makes us indecisive, which leads to our procrastination. You can settle their fears with testimonials, personal stories, and examples of people just like them. So I like to use stories a lot of times of families that I previously met with. A family I met with last week had the same concern. And when my father passed away, when I sat down to make these decisions with my spouse, use those personal experiences. I just had a family the other day that those are all going to be things that are going to help kind of build this whole process. And you can even say, a family was really, kind of concerned. They'd never been into our funeral home before. So what we did is we went ahead and took care of all the paperwork, got everything done. They wrote me a check for their first month's premium, and then I just held on to that paperwork and invited them to come into the funeral home so they could introduce them to a couple of people. So if it's okay with you, why don't we go ahead and get everything done today? And before I leave, let's just set up a time for you to come into the funeral home. I'd be happy to show you around, introduce you to the owners, because I want you to feel completely comfortable with everything that we've done before we send in your paperwork. Does that sound fair to you? Right? So again, help them settle their fears and be comfortable in their decision to do what you got to do to make that happen. Okay? In the end, though, it usually does come down to the money. This is really important. You got to figure it out, though. Are they comfortable with their decisions and the total cost? If they say something like, it's just too expensive, that's where you say, well, is it the total funeral that's too expensive, or is it the monthly payment that's too expensive, right? So if they're comfortable with their casket and their services and everything they pick, no, we're okay with everything that we picked. We're just not sure about the monthly payment. Then you can get into that. Well, it just seems like a lot. Well, maybe we can. You did the whole plan. You got cash advance. You got a casket in there. You got a vault in there. You got services. Maybe we can start with something a little bit smaller. Okay, making sure they understand the terms. And then the other thing too, don't get into the weeds discussing things they don't specifically ask about. Some examples of this would be, this has been a few years back now, but I was on a presentation and somebody went into a whole big tangent on the insurance company and their AM Best rating and how secure they are, and they don't need to worry about their money. And it brought up all of these other questions that would have never come into play. So be really careful about trying to impress people with your wisdom if it's not wisdom that they're interested in hearing. And in this particular case, this person was, I'm like, do you do that on every presentation? Like, tell them what the AM Best rating is? People rarely even ask that question. What's the insurance company's AM Best rating? But he went on this whole thing about the financial security of the insurance company, and I just thought it was really confusing. So don't get in the weeds discussing things they don't specifically ask about. This is really important because that's just going to create more questions. And again, you guys, it's your job to fully protect every family, and that means funding. Don't get me wrong here. A family who pre-plans and they don't fund because they don't have the money to fund, that is still a win, okay? That's a win. Don't get me wrong. I know that some families can't fund, won't fund, choose not to fund, but we got to do everything we can to help them see that funding is the best option for them. Sometimes we've heard like the first person who opens their mouth loses. There's a winner and loser in every sales presentation. I'll challenge that. There's not a winner and loser at the end of a presentation. There are either two losers or two winners. Either you both win or you both lose. So this kind of old school mentality of, the first person who speaks loses, or, someone wins and someone loses in every presentation. Not true at all. Either you both win or you both lose. That's really important to understand, okay? Because the family wins by having their arrangements taken care of. You win the customer, and you win because you win and the customer wins when you professionally guide them into a payment option that works. This takes time and patience, but you don't want to give up. Asking for money is uncomfortable no matter how long you are in the business. Any professional will tell you when it gets down, sales professional, when it gets down to the money, it gets uncomfortable, right? Because that's where you're at the fork in the road. So just understand that. If you don't ask for the money, you don't get paid, and the family is only partially protected. You got to get comfortable and get used to asking for a payment on your first visit. And the question is, are you a volunteer for your funeral home, or are you a professional sales consultant? Are you a volunteer professional visitor? You go out on these appointments all the time, and you just have these great conversations, and they thank you for coming over, and thank you because you brought this information, but you're leaving without a sale. You got to figure out what you're doing there, because you guys aren't volunteers. You either both win or you both lose, so figure that out. And the last step to all of this, you guys, is to just get comfortable being uncomfortable. This is an uncomfortable topic. You're asking uncomfortable questions. When you ask people, what do you think will happen if somebody died yesterday and you were at the funeral home today? That's an uncomfortable question to ask. That's an uncomfortable question to even answer. It's a question that nobody's ever been asked before. Just get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because the more discomfort you create, the more likelihood it is that these families are going to make a decision. But if you make everything just, roses and everything's wonderful and we're fun and we're laughing and we're having a great time and it's just comfortable the whole time, and you leave and you're like, man, I didn't get a sale, but boy, when these people die, they're going to call our funeral home. And in fact, they even invited me over to their 25th wedding anniversary barbecue. I mean, I just connected with this family. That's all good and well, but you've created, things were so comfortable that it was just very easy for them to say, Wes, you've been great. We love you. It's been nice having you in our home. We've had a great conversation. I was so happy to hear about all your kids and everything that they've accomplished in life. And you sound like you have a wonderful family. We're just not going to do anything today, though. But we really thank you for coming over. That means that I was more of a friend than I was an advisor, right? And there's a difference. If you've ever had to sit with an attorney, you can get the feeling really quick that the person that you trust to do the job is a person that is asking you all the questions, getting all the information, taking lots of good notes, and is reassuring you that they're going to do the best job that they can, not the guy who you leave and you're like, that was a really great conversation, but I don't feel like we accomplished anything. You got to accomplish things, and by accomplishing things, it's going to take getting a little bit uncomfortable. So, guys, that is the end of my presentation. I'm not sure if there's a couple chats here. Well, Gary just said he had to take off, so I think we're good. You guys, I've gone a little bit over time today, so I apologize, but I want to get as much of this out. I'll send this presentation out to you. I'll be including the emotional trial closes handout as well as the 10 powerful questions handout, so you can practice some of this stuff. But again, remember a couple things. One, there are more sales lost on the phone than in the home. All you're trying to do is deliver a personal wishes organizer. That's it. Stay focused on that principle. And with the last statement, just be comfortable being uncomfortable. This is an uncomfortable subject matter. It's uncomfortable talking about it for families, but we create uncomfort and discomfort so that when that time comes and when someone in that family dies, it's a more comfortable experience. So short-term pain and discomfort for long-term gain, right? Think of these principles as you're meeting with families, that my job is to create discomfort now to save them from even more discomfort later. I have to disrupt things, and that's what has families take care of these things ahead of time. So, and guess what? They're going to like you just as much. There's been many, many families, and you guys all have stories. When you leave the house, I've had, we weren't going to do anything tonight, but we're so glad we did. Thank you for coming over. Big hugs. I've had families send thank you notes. We had a story. Who was it? Sherry shared a family that actually sent her a gift card, which is awesome, for coming over and giving them information. So these are all examples, but families will still like you, but more importantly, they trust you. And trustability is more important than likability when it comes to helping a family make these decisions. So you guys, thanks for your time today. Appreciate you being on the call. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.